Let me flip this thing around so I can see it a little bit better. Well, that wasn't very freaking smart. Welcome back to Bad Attitude C10. Well, today we're going to do something a little unplanned. I was actually wanting to be finishing up doing the roll pan on the front of the truck to where I get a, basically a picture of the whole front end together and in one piece. But the bracket that we ordered that goes from the hood latch down to the back of the grill is not here. And I also, due to the rain, didn't get out there Thursday and get everything taken apart to where I could start doing it today. So instead, we're going to change gears and move over toward the cooling system. And I had picked up some brushless fans from Steel Racing Products, which can be seen right here. And I'll put a link to their website down below. But they hooked us up with two of their 16-inch brushless fans. That way we can control them with pulse width modulation. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to remove the standard 16-inch fans off of the shroud and install these new brushless ones. And I'm probably going to go ahead and mount the 50 amp relays and put the pigtails on and try to at least wire part of the harness for the shroud that is stayed with the fans and everything. So anyway, let's get to it. So we're going to start off by removing the fans that came with the shroud setup that we bought, which is actually for a late model GMC Chevrolet pickup. And what we'll have to do is remove the 8 button head machine screws, and then we'll go from there. So guys, I want y'all to pay attention to this, that I did get a backing wrench out and everything like that, but these things were not even tight. I understand they do have locking flange nuts on them, but I was able to just break them loose with my little bitty ratchet and the bit, and there was no need for a backup wrench or another tool to remove these at all. So I'm kind of glad that I ended up going with these other fans. Otherwise, I never would have known that these were not properly, put in or mounted, however you want to say it, tightened. So just be sure, even if you're dealing with new stuff, always double check stuff, because this right here, could have vibrated loose and I could have had fans falling around and everything else. So I guess it's a good deal that I ended up swapping these out. So guys, I know that I just said that I did buy the fan shroud setup for a later model Chevrolet or GMC pickup. I'll get, further into detail on why that was chosen a little bit further into the video. But as for now, with these two old fans removed, I'm going to give you your first look at the 16-inch steel brushless fan. And if you notice, it's got 3 wires, a red for a hot, a black for a ground, and a white, which is a signal wire, which we can pulse width modulate our fan. So I started out by rotating the fan around to find a location that we could use, and then I went on ahead and just grabbed a ruler and got them to where they were pretty much as close as possible. And then I was going to mark my hose with the Sharpie, but it wouldn't fit. So since the Sharpie wouldn't go all the way down and touch the shroud itself, I had to go and dig out one of these little blue Sharpie permanent markers. It's a fine tip. And that allowed me to go through and mark the hose. Now I'm only going to mark the bottom hose and drill them and go ahead and put hardware in, and then we'll mark the top. With our hose now drilled, I went ahead and reinstalled the button head machine screws that came with our shroud setup originally. And I noticed at this time that the motors were not going to be clocked properly. So before I drilled the top hose, I was going to go ahead and rotate the motor that was going to be on the right side fan to where it would match. And I'll show you a little close-up of this here in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the 4 screws and rotate it. And then we'll go on ahead and drill our top hose and go from there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the machine screws were going to be too short that came with it, so I was going to use 1/4 20 hardware and just put a nut and a washer between the bottom of the leg and the shroud. That way it would kind of shim it up and it wouldn't be bending the plastic. So here's a look at the hardware that it was in the kit and then what I used. As you can see, it's almost about 1/4 of an inch longer, and that would allow me to get enough threads through the nylock portion of the nut and everything else. So let's go on ahead and throw this together. Now, when it came to the washer that I used on the inside of the shroud, I used a fender washer, which if y'all aren't familiar with it, it actually covers up a little more surface area and spreads it out, and I figured that would give me a little better holding power and it would incorporate more of the strength of the shroud versus a small one. And then I followed it up with the nylock nut. So let me get this popped in and I'll give you a look. So here's a glance at the inside showing you the nylock nut and how the threads are all the way through the nylock portion and the actual fender washer. Now guys, you ever do something the first time and then once you do it, you say, hey, I think I got a better idea. Well, that just happened. So that's kind of like if I have to have a longer bolt and a spacer in here between the fan mounts and the actual shroud, why not put the hardware in from the bottom in the bolt pushing the threads out and then put a nut to retain it to the shroud, to where if in the future I needed to change a fan, especially if it's like at a drag and drop event or something, I could just remove the nuts and replace the fan without having to take the whole shroud off the truck. So I'm going to test that theory and go ahead and install this. Let me flip this thing around so I can see it a little bit better. Well, that wasn't very freaking smart. Stuff don't stay together without a bolt. Anyway, alright guys, so I went on ahead and I tightened up the actual jam nut to the hardware, and then I put the nylock washers on, or nylock nuts, I'm sorry, and this is what it looks like from the inside. So the bolt heads would be on the inside, and there'll be a washer, which would be the fender washer, and then there'd be the nut that it was a jam nut. So now, if I need to remove the fan, I could just loosen the nylock nut up, not even having to have a backup wrench or anything, which means the shroud could stay on the radiator and mounted to the truck, and I could just remove the 4 retaining nuts and unplug the harness and change out the fan. So I'm thinking this is what I'm going to roll with, and that means I'm going to have to go and change the side that I originally did and flip it. So here we go. So guys, earlier I mentioned that this shroud was actually for a later model truck, and the reason I went with it, it is larger, and I was actually going to use an air-to-air cooler in addition to the water-to-air cooler. So if I wasn't having to run the water with the Freon through the inner chiller, I could just chill my water with the air. Well, it was going to be mounted in the front, but well, now since we can't fit the intercooler reservoir and stuff in the front of the truck, that means that's not going to be needed. So I'm going to have to modify this shroud just to incorporate the radiator. So here's the finished product, and we'll go from there. Now, my camera took a dump, guys, so I actually used the original 2 mounting hose to mount my 50 amp relays, as you can see here with the camera that I went back and shot the video because I lost other footage. There's how much of the thread is sticking through the nylock nuts, which is plenty, so they're locked in place. And then the actual relays, I have 1 for each fan, and they're now mounted the same way. I put the stud through the back with the jam nut. Now here's where I rotated the clock. If you see here, it's got the 2 mounting tabs for the harness, and there's 2 up here. So no matter how I positioned the fan originally, it would either be turned and the wiring would be up too high, or if I rotated it, it would be pointing in the same direction as the other side. So then the harness would be too short to get to the middle, and I wanted everything to be in the middle. So now they both point inwards, and the logos, I understand, are kind of canted, but hey, they're actually clean and look good. Alright guys, this went a little long, so next time I'll do the harness. Till then, thanks for watching.